morning as we entering into our study. We ask the Lord for wisdom and understanding. As we continue on, Lord, give us simplicity of understanding and simplicity of speech. May your angels be in our midst, and may your name alone be glorified, and may all glory and honor return unto thee. I, the human vessel behind your cross, that only you might be reflected. We ask merciful Savior for all these things in Christ's name. Amen. Considering the time we have named over this, can you see? People that time. How's it? Good. Considering the time we have, I'm going to be skipping some stuff. I won't be proving everything as we go. People can always read the article because it's an article. Because I won't finish, and we want to try and finish. I know it's not a rushing to finish, but we need to give them a logical conclusion so that people know what this is emphasizing. So let's continue. It's page 13. Right. We ended yesterday by identifying that Jehu is a classic example of what? Yes, the president, but yes, what does Sister White tell us his character is that of? His zeal. A Pharisee. So I've got quotations here which are going to show you that Jehu is a Pharisee. And I'm going to try and link the Pharisees with the Republican Party. Actually, not page 13, on page 10, where it says, men are slow to learn. So I'm going to read. This is 2 Bible commentary, page 1038, paragraph 2. Men are slow to learn the lesson that the Spirit manifested by Jehu will never bind hearts together. It is not safe for us to bind our interests with a Jehu religion. For this will result in bringing sadness of heart upon God's true workers. God has not given any of his servants the work of punishing those who will not heed his warnings and reproofs. So Sister White is telling us that a Jehu religion is a religion of someone who's punishing those who do not agree with them. Do you see that? So Jehu is a corrector of heretics, right? He's Justinian, he's all these people that we can think of. Corrector of heretics. And then this is Great Controversy 568, paragraph 1. Remember Jehu, what does he tell the people when he's about to go on his escapade? What does he tell the people? Come and do what? See my zeal for the Lord. He's got some zeal, right? Yes. And here it says, there is a striking similarity between the Church of Rome and the Jewish church at the time of Christ's first advent. Then I'm going to read the next bold. I'm going to be skipping some. So I'm going to the next bold on the same quotation. The Savior's words concerning the bigoted Jews applied with still greater force to the leaders of the Roman Catholic Church. They bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. So do you see, she's showing you that the Jewish church typifies what? The Catholic Church, right? But when you look at where she's commenting from Matthew, she's actually talking about the Pharisees. Christ was talking to the Pharisees. If you then follow this quotation from where she takes it from, do you follow? So when she's talking about the Jewish church, she's mainly emphasizing the Pharisees, not primarily the Sadducees. Do you see that? So I want to make that distinction. So there's a similarity between a Pharisee and a Roman Catholic. Even if you just, without a quotation, you will not see it. If you look at the religion in the time of Christ and the Catholic, are they just not the same? Yeah, exalting forms and all these traditions and stuff, right? Yes. Acts of the Apostles, page 112, paragraph 1. Saul was a Hebrew of the Hebrews. As touching the law, a Pharisee concerning zeal, persecuting the church, touching the righteousness which is of the law, blameless. So Paul is a Pharisee. And what are the characteristics that we're being told that a Pharisee has? Zeal. But is this zeal in the proper place? No. Let's read the next quotation. It will tell us that it's mistaken zeal. Acts of the Apostles 1:13, paragraph 3. Saul of Tarsus, in the strength and vigor of manhood, and fired with mistaken zeal, set out on the memorable journey, the strange occurrences of which were to change the whole current of his life. So what type of zeal does Saul have? Mistaken zeal, and he's a Pharisee. You see that? So what are one of the ways that we see manifested in the zeal of Saul? What does he do with this zeal? Correct heretics. You know, he's on this campaign to destroy those who do not hold to his religion. We see the same with Jehu. So Jehu is a classic example of a Pharisee, which is a Roman Catholic. Right? Great Controversy 3:12, paragraph 2. I'm going to read the bold. This is a reform. I lived a Pharisee, a devoted Romanist. He burned with zeal to destroy all who should dare to oppose the church. I would gnash my teeth like a furious wolf. He afterwards said, referring to the spirit of his life, when I heard anyone speaking against the Pope. So you see, this is constantly being confirmed, that a Pharisee is a type of a Roman Catholic. You see this, right? But at the end of the world, how is the Roman Catholic going to be active? Through the water. Because who's going to be reflecting the image of the beast? The Protestants, right? So the Protestants reflect the character of the beast. So they're representative of the Catholic Church. But Jehu is a king, right? But he's a king with a characteristic of a Protestant. So he's a type of a president who is controlled by the Protestants. You see that? And we looked at this when we began our discourses. Who put Trump into office? How much of their votes did he get? 81%, right? Of the evangelical vote, and the number 81 is prophetic. Right? I'm not going to get into it, but it's prophetic. Now, we're going to look at what Jehu's mission was. Called to the prophetic office while Ahab was still reigning, Elisha had lived to see many changes take place in the kingdom of Israel. In brackets, USA. Judgment upon judgment before the Israelites during the reign of Hazael the Syrian, which we're calling Putin the Russian, and I'm going to try and show it a bit, who had been anointed to be the scourge of the apostate nation. The stern measures of reform instituted by Jehu, Trump and the National Reform Movement, had resulted in the slaying of the house of Ahab, the fall of the USA. So, what was Jehu seeking to introduce? Reform. Which party was Trump campaigning under in 2000? The Reform Party. And the Protestants, we're going to see it as we go. Okay, let's read the next. It will explain itself. Jehu's reform represents the national reform movement, which began during the time of the first Republican president, when there was a civil war. Who was the first Republican president? So he typifies what? The last Republican president. And the national reform movement began in the time of the first Republican president. So when Jehu institutes his reform, and we've agreed that Jehu typifies the last Republican president, we see its airtight connections. What does Abraham mean?
Father of
a multitude. It's going to be a leader of many nations. But what does Lincoln mean? Roman column. So in the time of Trump, who's been typified by Abraham Lincoln, he's going to lead the whole world. He's going to be the father of the multitude. That's going to make the whole world a Roman colony. Yes, that's what it means. This is from Wikipedia. talking about the national reform movement. What was their agenda? Christian amendment desires, if there was a civil war in the time of Lincoln, there has to be a civil war in the time of Trump. Yes. Christian amendment describes any of several attempts to amend the United States Constitution by inserting explicitly Christian ideas and language. The most powerful such attempt began during the American Civil War and was spearheaded by the National Reform Association. In February 1863, during the American Civil War, a coalition of 11 Protestant churches from 7 northern states gathered to discuss the state of the nation. Seeing the Civil War as God's punishment on the omission of God from the Constitution, they discussed the proposed amendment to alter the wording of the preamble to acknowledge God. The idea that civil government derived their legitimacy from God and Jesus in particular was alleged to be based on biblical passages such as Psalm 2 and Romans 13. So, how many Protestant churches were there? 11. We're going to look at that, the number 11. But they were coming from how many northern states? 7. They were coming from what states? The northern states. And he said the Protestants are the daughters of who? The papacy. The papacy is the king of what? The north. So it's then an accident that they're coming from the north. Yes, so we're going to show that the first trumpet, as we go on, is hail. And hail comes from the north. And we're going to show that this is Pat Robertson of the 700 Club, who began the Christian right in 1989, the time of the end. Hail falling from the north. We're going to see all those. The Christian right is the modern version of the national reform movement. You see that? And it began in the time, the Christian coalition began in the time of Bush the Great. Bush the Great. Right. 81%. So I'm reading the commentary. 11 Protestant sects from 7 northern states spearheaded the rise. So can you put the number 7 from midnight right to the Sunday law? Yes, it's a factor of 70, right? So you can put the number 7 here, right? And is there a civil war here? And what has Brother Tabo been telling us that the civil war is going to result in? The first Sunday law, an amendment to the Constitution. Right? So there'll be a civil war here, right? And when that civil war takes place, it will lead to the Sunday laws. The Protestant churches are going to say we need to take control of the government because we're being punished by God. You see the logic? Yes. 11 Protestant sects from 7 northern states spearheaded the rise of the national reform movement. The number 11 can be placed at the midnight cry, and also the number 7 because Christ is arrested at midnight as the people cry out to have him executed. And at that stage, there were 11 disciples left because Judas had just fallen away. Christ then goes through 7 trials, with the 7th trial being the one where people cry, Barabbas, Barabbas. And Barabbas was a robber and a murderer, symbolizing the papacy who is chosen by the people at the Sunday law, and the papacy is known as the robbers of thy people. I chose to place this from midnight cry to the Sunday law, though you can bring it one step back from midnight to the midnight cry. But context demands I place it there, because the other lines show that the civil war takes place at the midnight cry. Because that is when the United States is divided towards the 4 winds, which is national wind. So do you follow the logic? We typically, yes, Christ is arrested at midnight, but let's not forget, this is a cry at what? At midnight, so this is midnight as well. We follow. We need to determine which midnight is being referred to based on context. And the context shows you that the civil war is here, not there. So if the Protestant churches are coming in the 11 from 7 northern states in response to a civil war, you have to be able to plug that on a contextual line, which is at the midnight cry. So I'm saying Christ here is bound at midnight, which is the midnight cry, right? And then the people trying for how many times? 7 times, which leads you to the Sunday law, where the people then choose Barabbas. And Barabbas was a murderer and a robber. And Rome is the robbers of thy people. Do the people choose Rome at the Sunday law? Yes, the papacy is exalted at the Sunday law, right? And can you mark the number 11 here? Yes, you can, because Judas falls off and the 11 disciples left. Right? But I'm saying you can bring it back at a fractal level. You're going to be looking at the priests, and based on another line. You see that? Context is key. Daniel 11:2. Okay, I'll just read 3 and 4. And And a mighty king shall stand up, that shall rule with great dominion, and do according to his will. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken, and shall be divided towards the four winds. Which kingdom is going to be broken? His kingdom. What is his kingdom?
USA.
USA. So the USA is going to be broken and divided towards what? The four winds. Right? We're going to show that those four winds are a symbol of revolution and national glory. Yes, I'm acknowledging the fact that you can read that verse in many ways. One of the things that you can glean is that when the United States is broken, it becomes it becomes swallowed up by the United Nations. It's divided towards the UN. You follow? Towards the four winds. It's scattered among the heathen. You can read it that way. But you can also read that the United States is going to be broken into four parts. It's divided into four parts. Do you follow? So that verse can apply to it being scattered among the heathen. It can also apply to the internal ruin that comes upon the United States when it's broken into four parts. So the United States is going to be broken into four parts when the mighty king stands. When does the mighty king stand? When did we say he stands? Where? He doesn't stand at midnight. He begins to stand at midnight. At the midnight cry. Because where the mighty king is leading which nation? When he's the mighty king, which nation is he leading? The United Nations, the Greeks. And when do the Greeks come in? At the midnight cry. So when does the mighty king stand? At the midnight cry. So when is his kingdom broken into four parts? At the midnight cry. So you're going to see a fourfold division of the USA in this history. You follow? It's going to be divided into four parts. Right? We're going to show what it means that it's divided into four parts. The word used for divided means to split in two or cut in half. When Jeroboam stood as a leader of the 10 tribes, what happened to the kingdom of Israel?
It was divided.
It was divided. And when it was divided, what began to take place? Civil war. You follow? Yes. And if you count Saul ruled for 40 years, David ruled for 40 years, Solomon ruled for 40 years. So what's that in total? 120. And in the 120th year, Rehoboam begins to rule. And what happens to the kingdom? Civil war. Where do you mark the number 120? Midnight cry. Civil war. You can have these parallel kingdoms. And you see. 2 Kings 9 verse 13 from the notes. We want to show you the dynamics associated with the anointing of Jehu. Right? We said he's anointed at midnight, but he begins his campaign at the midnight cry onwards. So I'll read the bold. Then they hasted and took every man his garment and put it under him on the top of the stairs and blew the trumpet, saying, Jehu is king. So, and Sister White told you that the trumpet is a symbol of a revolt. But King Joram was returned to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds of the Syrians, which the Syrians had given him when he fought with Hazael, king of Syria. So when Jehu is anointed, what has just happened to the nation? The same time he's anointed, they've been wounded by Syria. So when are we saying Jehu is anointed? Midnight. So what happens to the United States around about the time when they anoint Jehu? Syria wounds that nation. I'm going to show that Syria is Russia because Hazael is Putin. As we go on, Hazael is Putin. I think I'm going to explain. Yes, I think I do. Then let's go to the next board. So I'll just begin in verse 18. So they went out on horseback to meet him and said, Thus saith the king, is it peace? And Jehu said, What hast thou to do with peace? Turn thee behind thee. And then you read verse 19, it says, And he sent out a second on horseback, which came to them and said, Thus saith the king, is it peace? Then Jehu said, What hast thou to do with peace? Turn thee behind me. What's that? A doubling. You see a doubling, right? And you can mark the doubling in the midnight cry. You right? Yes. Verse 21. And Joram said, Make ready. And his chariot was made ready. And Joram, king of Israel, and Hazael, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, went out, each in his chariot, and they went out against Jehu, and met him in the portion of Naboth the Jezreelite. So, what's happening here? you've got kings from the same kingdom going against each other. What's going on? It's a civil war. It's a civil war. Verse 23. And Joram turned his hands and fled and said to Ahaziah, there is treachery. So when Jehu takes control of the kingdom, what is he doing? He's dealing treacherously. It's treachery. We follow. It's a rebellion. We noted that Jehu is anointed at midnight. Then he begins his work of getting rid of the evildoers. And we mark this at the midnight cry, as we see a doubling of questions asked there, and a second chariot. For those who studied some of the lines, what's one of the characteristics of the midnight cry? We see a doubling. What else? We see an inquiry. You often see a question asked here. Do you know that? Yes. Gabriel, when Daniel is touched the third time, Gabriel asks him a question. Do you know what I'm going to do now? He asks the question. And then he says, when I'm gone forth, I'm going to fight with the prince of Persia. And when I'm gone, Greece is going to come. So at the midnight cry, you often see a question, right? An inquiry. Right? When Christ is entering into the triumphal entry, people ask, who is this? You often see an inquiry at the midnight cry. Right? Doubling of questions in the midnight cry because of the doublings. At this stage, we see the kingdom is divided into two, as Jehu is going against the current administration, which has just been wounded by the Syrians, Russians. This is showing how one of the events that lead to the rise of Jehu at midnight and initiate his work of reform is the attack by Russia as it leaves the USA wounded. The wounding of the USA is the breaking of the two horns of the ram in Daniel 8 by Greece, which is another symbol of Russia, with the AZL being the notable one. When the power receives a deadly wound, it's characterized by another power entering into its fortress, as shown in Daniel 11, 7 and 40, and Revelation 13. At one level, Daniel 11, 40 identifies the king of the south pushing at the king of the north, which can be marked at midnight due to recent developments, which hinge upon an understanding of the Battle of Raphia, when the king of the south is moved with Kola against the king of the north, which we understand to be pointing to the war between the USA north and Russia south. In Daniel 11, 7, the king of the south enters into the fortress of the king of the north. And in our last article, we identified that a fortress is a capital city, a stronghold, a place of strength, or a place of refuge. The strength of the USA is its constitution. So when the king of the south enters into the fortress at midnight, it's identifying how the strike by Russia at midnight will have constitutional implications. In Daniel 8, we see the he-goat is Russia smiting the ram, USA, and breaking his two horns and leaving the ram powerless because the two horns are the fortress. The word used there for smote is this. So, in simple terms, this one I'm not going to explain in depth, but one of the things that, if you've been following the opening of the seventh seal, one of the things that's being identified in this history, maybe first of all, let me just prove to you how Syria can be a type of Russia. Does anyone have an idea how you can show that Syria can be typifying Russia? Syria typifying Russia. Anyone with an idea of how Syria can typify Russia?
I don't know if this is, but I think when we were doing a lesson, they showed how the three homes typify one another and how they conquer. And when you look at the pagan home, it went from east and then it went to the glorious land and then it conquered the south. So when you look at the east there, it's Syria. And the glorious land is the USA, Judea. So when you line that up with the three obstacles in our time, east lines up with Russia, the first obstacle. The glorious land lines up with the America, and then the south lines up with, of course, Egypt, the UN.
Do you follow his logic? Based on the triple application of the Romans, the first obstacle that pagan Rome had to conquer was Syria. In Daniel 8 is identified as being in the east. Do you follow? As being in the east. So the first obstacle for pagan Rome typifies the first obstacle for modern Rome. And what's the first obstacle that modern Rome has to conquer? Russia. So Russia is Syria. You follow? It's been symbolized by Syria, right? So Russia has been typified by Syria. You follow? So Haziel is a what? A Syrian. So he's a what? A Russian. Right? So when Jehu was anointed here, Russia would have just struck and wounded the nation. And we then looked at the word wound in the Bible. The king of the north receives a wound, doesn't he? Daniel 11:40. But at the end of the world, who are we identifying? Maybe not here, but who's the king of the north in this context? United States. We're seeing that, right? Because the United States, Jehu is a Pharisee, right? And the Pharisee is a representative of the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church is the king of the north. And Jehu is representing the United States when the Catholics are taking control of the government. So it's the king of the north. You follow? So what does the king of the south do? At the time of the end, shall the king of the south push? Right? But when you look at Revelation 13, Daniel 11:7. Daniel 11:7 talks about the king of the south entering into the fortress of the north, of the king of the north. You follow? So when the south attacks the north at midnight, it's entering into the fortress. You follow? And the word fortress means a stronghold, or a place of strength, or a place of refuge. What is the strength of the United States? Its constitution. So when the south wounds the north, what has been wounded? The constitution. We follow. That's what we're saying when Jehu was anointed as king. The kingdom has just been wounded by Haziel. And Haziel was anointed to scourge apostate Israel. You follow? So when Russia strikes at midnight, it's going to be a judgment on the sins of the USA. Do you follow? Yes. I know this is a lengthy study. I'm just trying to summarize it outside the scope of this, but so that people can get a bit of what's going on there. So I have there in the Strongs. I think I might have to skip to that. I think it's necessary. We're saying in Daniel chapter 8, you see a eagle choose Greece, right? Did we agree that Greece can be a type of Russia? We did, right? Remember? Yes. Let me give you a simple illustration. It's very difficult to give a crash course, but I want people to have some type of idea. Right. Who knows about the Battle of Raphia? Raphia. Who studied the Battle of Raphia? Daniel 11:11. Right? Daniel 11:11 says what? And the king of the south shall what? Shall be moved with choler against the king of the north. Right? Which we know Raphia is marked at midnight. Right? Yes, for those who've been following the studies, they know that Raphia is marked at midnight. When the truth about that, when that truth was opened up, we discovered that Russia is still the king of the south. Because we thought that the king of the south was destroyed in 1989. Right? But then when Daniel 11 was opened up, when the Lord removed his hand, we saw that verse 11 identifies that after the time of the end, the king of the south is going to come and strike and be moved with choler. Do you follow? Yes. So you have a word moved with choler. What do we do as proof texters? If we see in Daniel 11, there's a word identified as moved with choler. What do? You look for where else you find it in the Bible. And there are only two places you find it directly in the Bible. So if there are only two places, what does that mean? If you need two witnesses to establish a thing. Yes, you bring them line upon line, but what does it mean?
It is established by God.
It's what's established. If the king of the south is moved with choler, and you find another place in the Bible which doesn't say king of the south, but it says Greece. But it says Greece is moved with choler. What does it mean? Greece is the king of the south. That's what we did yesterday, right? CEO, Elder Joshua. The characteristics are the same. Different names used. Right? So, Daniel 11:11, the south is moved with choler. Daniel 8, Greece is moved with choler. So Greece is the south. Right? And we know from the Battle of Raphia that Russia is moved with choler at midnight. So when is Greece moved with cola? At midnight. And when the he-goat is moved with cola, what does he do to the ram? He breaks his horns. Who's the ram? Who's the ram? It's a two-horned ram. So who's it? It's the USA. So when Russia strikes the USA, when it's moved with cola, what is it going to break? Two horns. You can identify that as economic and military might, right? But you can also identify it as Protestantism and Republicanism, because that's going to cause the Constitution to be amended. You follow? Because he has just entered into the fortress, broken the horns of the USA. You follow? And the word they used in the Hebrew for smite, because it talks about the he-goat smiting the man. The word, if you look in the Hebrew I have here, the word is smite. And I have there in the Strong's, Hebrew 5:21. 21. You must number 21 here. Yeah? Yes, no, it's actually 52:21, but there's 21. So it's there. Smite, it means what? It's to scourge. It also means what? For those who are following? To be wounded. So when Russia strikes the USA, it's going to be a scourge. It's going to be a wound. You follow? And when we were looking at when Jehu was anointed, what had just happened to the nation? What had Hazael done to them? He had wounded them. But when we read in Prophets and Kings, what was Hazael anointed to do to apostate Israel? To scourge. You follow? So Hazael is Russia. It's the notable one in Daniel chapter 8, the he-goat. You follow? As noted earlier, Hazael was anointed to scourge Israel, and Hazael was a Syrian, who in this context is the king of the south, because Syria was the first one pagan Rome to conquer. And how pagan Rome conquered typifies how, okay, I think I identified that. Yes. Okay, let me just read. How pagan Rome conquered typifies how modern Rome conquers. And the first obstacle that modern Rome has to conquer is the king of the south, thus showing that Syria and the king of the south are interchangeable symbols for Russia, with the Hazael being Vladimir Putin. So 1798 can be marked at midnight, because the king of the south pushes and wounds the king of the north. Then 1989 can be at the midnight cry, when the king of the north retaliates and defeats the south. He overflows and passes over, and takes the countries with him, which in this case is probably identifying how one of the things that leads to the fall of the south is its allies revolting against it, as in 1989 when the USSR fell because of a revolution. In 1989 it can be midnight cry, probably suggesting that Russia will fall because of revolution, since it began in a revolution. Also, the notable one in Daniel 8 is broken into 4 parts towards the 4 winds. Winds are a symbol of revolution. So this is where I don't want people to get confused. When I first gave an introduction to this series, what did I say about at midnight? You're going to see Jehu and Alexander the Great, right? But at the midnight cry, you're going to see who? Alexander the Great. And that's not taboo, considering the structure, of midnight and the midnight cry. Behold, the bridegroom cometh. Behold, the bridegroom cometh. There's an Alexander that's active here, but it's Putin. We follow? Putin the Great. But there's an Alexander that's active here. It's Trump the Great. Which is where I don't want us to get confused. Because symbols, these nations share similar symbols. And you need to be able to rightly divide by context. But I won't dwell too much on it, but I just wanted to identify since I put it there. Right? Now we're going to define 4 winds. This is great controversy, 440. Now, look at this within the context of the United States. When the United States is broken, it's divided towards the what? The 4 winds at the midnight cry onwards. Now, Sister White is going to define 4 winds for us. What's our subject of discussion? What am I dealing with? The American Revolution. GC 440 to 441. Beasts of prey rising when the 4 winds of heaven stroke upon the great sea. Daniel 7:2. In Revelation 17, an angel explains that waters represent peoples, multitudes, and nations and tongues. Revelation 17:15. Winds are a symbol of strife. The four winds of heaven striving upon the great sea represent the terrible scenes of conquest and revolution by which kingdoms attained to power. So what do four winds represent? Revolution. So when the United States is divided towards the four winds, what is it given over to? Revolution, right? It's the end of the United States, it's ending in this history, because it began in what? In a revolution. So when it's divided towards the four winds, it's identifying that there's going to be revolution, purging the United States in this history as it's coming to a close. And you know that the UN is what type of power? Of the threefold union. It's a dragon power. And how does the dragon always rise? Through revolution. Sodom in Egypt, France. How did France become Egypt, the dragon? French Revolution. How did Russia become the king of the south, the dragon? Bolshevik Revolution, right? And now, so the UN is the 10 kings, they're the dragon, aren't they? So when the dragon comes again and begins to rise at the midnight cry, how does it have to rise? There has to be a revolution that's taking place in the United States, which necessitates the rise of the 10 kings. You follow? Yes. Then I have here where it says conclusion of this particular case, then we move to the next. This is showing you how the American Revolution was about, right? The American Revolution began with anti-taxation, etc. So did the Jewish revolt of AD 66, which we are marking at the anointing of Jehu. The Jewish revolters were termed zealots, which is Phariseeism. So the American Revolution was birthed because of anti-taxation. Do you follow? Yes, there was rebellion against tax. And we're going to look at the tax issues in following studies, but you can mark tax issues here at midnight. Right? There's going to be a revolt, but most populated the Obama administration has just taxed the people so bad, the people are prepared to revolt in the time of Trump. You follow? Yes. So we said this is AD 66, didn't we? And if you look in the history of AD 66, who knows what was going on at the time with the Jews? Why did Celsius come? He came to suppress the revolution. What were they revolting against? Taxation. That time was actually called the Jewish Revolution. There was a revolt. So AD 66 is associated with a revolution. And the people who led out in the revolution, which culminated in the destruction of Jerusalem, were what you call what? Zealots. Right? Zealots. Who are those known for their zeal? Pharisees. So the people that are going to be responsible for the revolution in the United States are who? The Pharisees. Right? The Protestants and the Republican Party. Do you follow? So I'm going to read this extract here from the Jewish revolt, but I won't read everything. But I'm just going to read the bold. And it's providential. When I was putting together these notes, this is I got it from Nobani, but he got it from Bakam. And I asked him. But I kept it, so I read it. I couldn't understand it at first because it was just intricate. But now it made sense when I was going through the document. The podcast, this is a person called Ed Stevens who did a podcast on he's documenting the Jewish revolt. And you know when he put this podcast together? July 21. So it was providential. I liked it. July 21. And I'm going to read the bold where it says, right to continue dwelling in the land, Josephus provides several reasons for their daring attempt to overthrow the Roman yoke. So when the Jews are revolting, they're trying to get rid of the existing government, right? But it leads to the destruction of Jerusalem. And one of the things that they were fighting for is one principle, the zealot principle, which they call the fourth philosophy, of freedom from taxation and from paying tribute to any foreign government. And that God was therefore totally on their side, no matter what they did. The founder of this fourth philosophy was Judas in Galilee in AD 6. So they had this blind zeal that they thought God is on our side. Have you ever thought about it? Like, Celsius comes, he besieges them, but Jesus had given a prediction that when you shall see this flee, tarry not. But Celsius comes, and what do the Jews do? They follow him, and they fight him. And when Celsius comes, when Titus returns, and he besieges Jerusalem in AD 70, instead of the people retaliating, and Sister White says, what do? They stubbornly persisted until they ended up eating their children. So they had so much blind zeal that they thought that they were correct. You follow? This is what the Protestants are going to be doing. Like a strong delusion that they're going to be thinking that they're on the right side of the issue at the cost of their lives, when they're going to end up eating their children in the siege. You follow? So the crisis that's coming is bad. The eating of the children is literal. Yes, it's literal. When you get to the close of probation, there won't be food. Right? There won't be food. It's going to repeat literally. So we need to flee and tarry not. But one of the reasons that can make you be possible to flee is there will be a prediction before midnight, which is being given now, which identifies this event. But right now, in this movement, some people say that that prediction is going to be a false prediction. There are people teaching that that prediction is going to come to pass, but let not your hearts be troubled. What type of nonsense is that? There's no such thing. How can God fulfill a prediction, and when it's fulfilled, you let not your heart be troubled? That's blind zeal that's going to be happening. So we need to guard against these things. Right? Reading on. I'm going to read the other bold. Point 8. But the biggest reason of all was their belief that at about that time, so about the time of the siege, right? They believed something. That about that time, one from their country would become the ruler of the habitable world. So it wasn't just independence from Rome that they wanted. He says there was a certain prophecy about a world ruler who was expected to appear at that time and take over the rulership of the whole world. Who's the ruler of the world? Don't know. So what are the Protestants going to be exalting? Who are they going to be putting up? Trump, the ruler of the world. They'll be exalting him here. They'll be anointing Jehu. Right? So let's go to part 2 of this. We'll go as much as we can of the study. For those who have the combined notes, we're just continuing. So here I've got the definition of a revolution. So let me read it. Revolution. A revolution is a fundamental change in power or organizational structure that takes place in a relatively short period of time. It's used to refer to political change dates from the scientific revolution occasioned by complete change from one constitution to another. So that's how you can define a revolution, right? One constitution to another. Modification of an existing constitution. So what's the revolution going to be about? The constitution, right? Yes. The purpose of this particular study is to further strengthen the claims that show that we are on the verge of the American Revolution, which is severe implications is brought to view in the previous installation. There are a few arguments we seek to establish which even justify the claim that the American Revolution begins to repeat at midnight. We identified that American Revolution led to the establishment of the Constitution. But Jesus illustrates the end with the beginning, so when the American Revolution repeats in our time, it is identifying the casting away of the Constitution, for prophecy often repeats in opposites. E.g., John was typified by Elijah, yet John was killed and Elijah wasn't. So at the end of the world, USA has been typified by the beginning of the USA. And in Revelation 13, we understand that when the United States comes up out of the earth, it has two horns which we understand to be republicanism and Protestantism. For Spirit of Prophecy, page 277, which Sister White identifies as its strength. But for the USA to develop these two horns, it had to go through a revolution. So for it to break those two horns, it has to go through a revolution. It has been identified that Donald James Trump is the last president of the United States, and is the one who will be there when the nation passes the Sunday law, and he is also there when midnight and the midnight cry arrives. Many arguments have been given, and I will not labor much to dwell on them, but will give a few simple ones to clarify this article. George Washington was the first president of the USA, and he was put on the throne due to a revolution. Therefore, the last president will have to be removed from the throne by a revolution. His removal from the throne is not suggesting that he ceases to be the leader of the USA, but is identifying how his kingdom shall be overturned by another kingdom through a revolution, which includes the abolition of the existing constitution. The structure of Revelation 17 gives us a template because the USA is the sixth kingdom, but after it, they will arise the seventh kingdom, which is the 10 kings, UN, according to Ezekiel 21. According to Ezekiel 21, kingdoms are overturned. The UN will overturn the USA, but in the Bible, there is a connection between the numbers 6 and 7. They are twins. For example, marriage was on the 6th day, and Sabbath was on the 7th day. And Sister White says that they are twin institutions. Job 5:19. He shall deliver thee in 6 troubles, yea, in 7, there shall no evil touch thee. These 6 things doth the Lord hate, yea, 7 are an abomination unto him. Do you follow that logic? I'm saying in the Bible the numbers 6 and 7 are connected. So there's going to come a time when the 6th kingdom and the 7th kingdom are going to be parallel. You follow? Marriage and the Sabbath are twins. Marriage was given on the 6th day, Sabbath on the 7th, but they're twins. So when you have the marriage, you have the number 6. But you also need to have the number 7 because they're twins. So in the time when the 6th kingdom is falling, it will be running parallel to the 7th kingdom, which will be rising. You follow? Yes. From this context, we see that there is a connection between the number 6 and 7. They are basically biblically intimate, meaning they are twins or run parallel. There will come a time when the 6th kingdom will be coexisting with the 7th kingdom before the 7th kingdom is fully set up, because its rise is progressive. Beginning from the midnight cry, as we have shown in past studies, the UN is a universal power, and one of the symbols of universal is 4 winds. Sister White says angels are holding the 4 winds, represented as an angel who was seeking to break loose and rush over the face of the whole earth. So there we see that 4 winds represent worldwide. We know that it's under the 4th administration that from the time of the end, where you see 2 parallel kingdoms. Because of Rehoboam and Jeroboam, as Judah, a 2-1 power, was running parallel with Israel for a time, before one of them was plucked up. Do you follow the logic? We're saying there's going to come a time when these 2 kingdoms will be parallel, before one of them gets plucked up. Do you follow? Because it says his kingdom shall be what? Plucked up. Was there a time when Judah and Benjamin and Israel were running parallel? Yes, but is there a time when one of them gets plucked up? Yes. So it's the same principle. Running parallel, plucked up. Daniel 11:3 and 4 identifies a mighty king standing up, who rules according to his will, and when he stands up, his kingdom is divided or broken or scattered towards the 4 winds. If you run the expression of scattering in the Bible, it oftentimes says scattered among the heathen, which is another term for Greeks or Gentiles. So when the mighty king's kingdom is divided, so the mighty king's kingdom is a kingdom that gets given to the Gentiles or scattered among the heathen, meaning it's a kingdom that existed before the Gentiles overturned it, which is the United States, because it's the 6th kingdom before the 7th kingdom overturns it. It also says his kingdom shall be plucked up for others who are not of his posterity, meaning they do not come from his lineage. The ones who swallow up the USA and begin to rule over them are not those from the 6th kingdom. The USA then comes under the dominion of the 10 kings and the papacy. It also says, according to his dominion which he ruled, meaning it's not given to his posterity. It's the posterity that are from his dominion which he ruled, USA. And the word used for dominion there means parallel kingdom, showing that his kingdom was once parallel to another kingdom before it was scattered among the heathen, UN. Which basically shows that his kingdom is the USA, but the leader of the USA at some point transitions to being the mighty king, who historically was Alexander the Great, the leader of Greece. And Greece in Daniel 2 is identified as a kingdom that was to bear rule over all the world, meaning worldwide, encompassing the 4 winds of heaven. And the nation that leads up the UN at the Sunday, law is the USA, because in Revelation 13, it tells the whole world to make an image to the beast. Now that we've put that in place, I would like to say that the winds are worldwide, which is true, but they can also be a symbol of revolution. So one of the things identified as marking the end of the USA is it scattered towards the 4 winds, meaning given over to a revolution, because what marked the beginning was a revolution. This is also identifying that one of the things that leads to the rise of the UN is a revolution, because the UN is a dragon power, and the dragon rises because of a revolution, as seen in the histories of the 2 former dragon powers, atheistic France and Russia. Yes. Now, the word mighty king, if you look at that word mighty means, who knows what it means? It means a tyrant. The word mighty means what? A tyrant. So when the mighty king stands up, who stands up? A tyrant stands up. And I've got the definition for a tyrant here. Fourth Spirit of Prophecy, page 410, paragraph 2. I'll read the bold. The people, okay. And thus arouse the tyranny, which only awaits a touch, which only waits for a touch to start again into cruelty and despotism. So there's a touch. When that touch is given, tyranny is going to be revived. You follow? This is Daniel's third touch. He's touched 3 times. 1, 2, and when he's touched the 3rd time, Gabriel sends Greece. He says Greece is coming. So there's tyranny. Alexander the Great only awaits a touch to come into history. You follow that? Okay. To spring up into cruelty and active despotism. National apostasy, which will end only in national ruin. You follow? So there's going to be national apostasy, which will result in national ruin. Now let's define despotism, right? Because there's tyranny, which is going to be despotism according to Zvorwadza. Let's define despotism. A despot, an emperor, a king or prince with absolute power, or ruling without any control from men, constitution or laws. Hence, in a general sense, a tyrant. So when the mighty king stands, he rules without a what? Constitution, right? Throws the constitution away. And the constitution was put in place because of revolution. So his revolution is going to break the constitution. You follow? Daniel 11:40. Famous verse. The United States began, And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind with chariots, with horsemen, and with many ships. And he shall enter into the countries, and shall overflow and pass over. He shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. Many shall be overthrown. Countries is added. The word also. So verse 40 says, the papacy shall do what? He shall overthrow. What is he going to do to the south? He's going to overflow. But then verse 41 says, he shall also enter into the glorious land. Who's the glorious land? United States. I want to define that word also. Who knows what it means? If in verse 40 it tells you how he enters the Soviet Union, then verse 41 says he shall also enter the USA. It means in a similar manner. If you look it up in your website, the word also means in a similar manner. We've done these studies with a couple of people here over Sundays. So how did the papacy enter the Soviet Union? He overflowed. So how is he going to enter the USA? He's also going to overflow. And now what is the overflowing that he did to the Soviet Union? The revolutions of 1989. That's what broke the communist government. We know that, right? The overflowing was fueled by a revolution. When the countries that made up the Soviet Union began to disintegrate, Romania, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, etc. So there's going to be a revolution which is going to break the United States, just like it broke the Soviet Union, right? This is, I took this from the Time of the End magazine. The Soviet President's session Friday with Pope John Paul II is the latest development of a revolution in the communist world that the Pope helped spark and Gorbachev is allowed to happen. So do you see this? Then you've got the revolutions of 1989. I've got a Wikipedia document for those who want to read it. Now, let me just put this last point in place. Daniel 11:22, where it says Daniel 11:22 and Tiberius and the French Revolution. Right. Daniel 11:22. Xerxes is the 4th king who typifies the 45th president of the USA, and since Rome establishes the vision, we gained a second witness to the line of the 4 kings brought to view in Daniel 11:2, from the 4 Roman rulers, with Tiberius being the 4th, making him a type of the 4th president. And in Daniel 11:21, Tiberius is not given the honor, which means glory of the kingdom, and the glory of the USA is the Constitution. We are also told this. Verse 22. And with the arms of the flood shall they be overflown from before him. and shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant. Then I'm going to read what Uriah Smith says here. Bishop Newton presents the following reading as agreeing with the original. So Uriah Smith is going to tell us the better reading of verse 22. So that makes more sense, right? So this is talking about Tiberius. And the arms of the overflower shall be overflown from before him, and shall be broken. The expression signifies revolution and violence. And in fulfillment, we should look for the arms of the overflower, Tiberius, to be overflown. Or in other words, for him to suffer a violent death. So do you see what Uriah Smith is saying? Who's the overflower?
It's Tiberius.
Tiberius. And what happens to his arms?
He was overflowing.
He's overflown, right? He's broken. He's broken, but who's also broken? Because it says, yea, also. Right? That word yea can be identifying a repeat and enlarge, or a repetition of something, showing you that this is the same history. Daniel 10 says, be strong, what? Yea, be strong. So when you see that word yea in the Bible, it often identifies a repetition or a repeat and enlarge. Right? So we are told that Tiberius is overflown. Yea, also the prince of the covenant. Who's the prince of the covenant? Christ. So when Tiberius is overflown, what is the overflowing?
The church also.
What does it mean to overflow? It's revolution, isn't it? Yes, and Tiberius typifies the 45th president. So in the time of Tiberius, there's going to be a what? An overflowing, a revolution. Whilst that revolution is taking place, the prince of the covenant shall also be broken. Who is the prince of the covenant? Christ. So Christ is slain during the time of the revolution. And who's Christ at the end of the war? God's people, right? In the French Revolution, was Christ broken? Yes. Sodom in Egypt, where our Lord was crucified. Follow. Yes. So this is the cross. This is the cross. Right? So let me just read this last part and then close, because I know that time is no more. This is a Wikipedia extract on Tiberius Caesar's reign. At age 65, 23 CE, after the death of his only son, Tiberius lost all interest in governing and put the head of the Praetorian Guard, Lucius Sejanus, in charge of Rome. He retired to Capri, 27 AD, for a life of self-indulgence and sadistic pleasures. But fearing he had abdicated too much power to the ambitious Sejanus, who had married his son's widow, he charged him and his wife with his son's murder and ordered their execution. The last 6 years of his life, Tiberius orchestrated a reign of terror, in which informers were paid for denouncing prominent Roman citizens, including relatives of the emperor. The whole Jewish economy was temporarily expelled from Rome, so there was immigration. Do you see that? There was immigration in the time of Tiberius. The Jews were kicked out. This is what Brother Tabo has been identifying. Anyone who was accused was subjected to torture and execution without further proof. So, which law is this?
It's Roman law.
Roman law, the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act is what we're using. And if you look at the Patriot Act, it's guilty until proven innocent. And in the French Revolution during the Reign of Terror, they used the law called the law of suspects. If you were suspected to be in opposition to the revolution, you'd be killed without any proof. This is what Tiberius was doing. So what are the Protestants going to be doing? A Christian version of the Reign of Terror. If you are suspected to be in opposition to the Sunday movement, you're gone. The guillotine is what's coming. Go to the boldface where it says, oh, this I repeated this. Okay. So when Tiberius' son dies, he becomes a despot, right? The kingdom is not given to his posterity, right? Now, last, how much time? Okay, let me just read this. This is Wikipedia. This is talking about Tiberius Caesar. Then I've got the law of suspects there for people to read in their spare time. What was it about? The third number, this is French. The third number of the VAES purported to quote without comment passages from the annals of the Roman historian Tacitus concerning the oppressive reign of the Emperor Tiberius. These terse portraits, describing a civilization turned sick by fear and brutality, were effective in drawing a powerful parallel between Rome under Tiberius and France during the Revolution. So do you see what this is identifying? The historians show you that the rule of Tiberius Caesar had striking similarities to the French Revolution. So what does that allow you to do? You can overlay the French Revolution with the revolution in Tiberius Caesar's reign. You follow? Yes. So we'll continue more in the following studies. I never got to touch on these. I don't know if I'm going to finish at this camp, but just for your own research, if anyone finds something interesting, you can tell me. But I'll look at the number 22. Daniel 11:22. And when Tiberius died, he had ruled for 22 years. So read Psalm 22, which talks about the cross, the dogs crucifying Christ in the time of Tiberius. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your word, the truth connected with the revolution, that is to break the Prince of the Covenant and the existing government. Lord, we understand the implications of these things that we are saying, and we need not take them lightly, but we need to approach these subjects prayerfully. We need to pray for one another, Lord. For Lord, we know that your word is identifying that we're going to be charged with sedition. We ask for boldness, Lord, to continue to speak the truth, irregardless of the possible outcome. As you have told us through the Roman servant that God's people are to speak the truth without calculating the consequences. So, Father, we ask for that strength, that boldness, that courage, and that wisdom, Lord, to speak things that will not be unnecessarily unnecessary and healthy excitement. Help us dwell upon these subjects, Lord, the things that we need to identify, and let's speak on them clearly so that God's people can be warned clearly. We thank you, merciful Savior, as we prepare for the next study. Grant us serenity and peace. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.